You're listening to The Authenticity Show, where you get to eavesdrop on great conversations about health, creativity, and the quest for excellence. Your hosts are Carlos Casados and Satch Purcell. Our guest today is Ben Cardall. Ben is a really interesting person, and we are lucky to have him on the show. He calls himself the Deductionist, and he's basically the real-life Sherlock Holmes. He's a stage magician and mentalist, but he also is the director of a security company and actually works with the police to help them solve cases. Really cool guy, fascinating conversation about the power of the mind. They also get into the philosophy of Stoicism, which is interesting, and Ben also talks about a mnemonic technique that he teaches called the memory palace. Truly amazing stuff. Stick around for the whole thing. Thank you for being here. Here we go.
Good morning and good evening, fellas.
Mm-hmm.
Satch and I, of course, are in the U.S. in Southern California, and Ben Cardall is who's speaking with us right now. Ben, where are you from?
I'm from England, right in the centre of England, in a place called Staffordshire. We are quite literally right in the middle of it all. Not quite northern, not quite southern. The Staffordshire is located in a place that's called the Midlands. Oh. we couldn't get any more central, to be fair.
That's great.
Ben, the Chinese word for China is Zhongguo, which means center or middle country.
Yes. Yeah.
Because they're the center of everything. Are you guys the center of anything?
Yeah.
We are quite good at exporting rock stars. Slash was born here. Lemmy was born here. Those are the ones that we tend to shout about. Robbie Williams was born here, but we tend to keep quiet about that one.
Very cool.
As well.
So Ben, I understand you are known as the Deductionist.
Correct.
Okay, so yeah, how did you get that name? And is that something? Was that slapped upon you, or is that just sort of what emerged?
To be honest, it's flagrantly stolen from an episode of Elementary. They were the first people to do it, and then I was in terms of my performance career, I was looking for like a good kind of name, a good kind of hook for the web series that I was doing at the time as well, and that fell right in my lap as something really cool. And so I started to talk about myself being the Deductionist because I kind of cut my teeth in the industry as the real Sherlock Holmes, and I worked the BBC Sherlock conventions as the real Sherlock Holmes, and the name just kind of took off. Essentially, it doesn't mean anything. The name, it just sounds really cool.
Yeah. And you went with the Deductionist. I mean, you probably went like, the Deducinator. No, that's not right. And then eventually, yeah, right.
Elimination.
There was several horrible ones. There was the Deduction Man at one point. Then there was all kinds of like sort of pseudo superhero sounding titles. The Deduction Guy, the Deduction Thing. I'm like, no, I'm laboring this point. It's terrible. And then the Deductionist was like, that proverbial. Well, not so much a light bulb, more of an luminous pipe went off above my head. I was like, "That's it. I'm running with it." And then we did like a series of T-shirts when the monographs came out, and everybody went absolutely crackers for them, and it became this whole kind of I am the Deductionist thing. That anybody with an interest in that way of life can declare themselves to be. It's a great little title, and I think it's great. I think it's super cool.
Yeah, I like it. And you probably had to say, no, honey, not the Seductionist, the Deductionist, right?
Awesome.
That came up from I believe of Anthony Jacquin as well, Carlos. Yeah. When I was putting out a book just for mentalists, I was trying to come up with a catchy title, obviously something Sherlockian, because that's what the entire material was based around. And Anthony came back, why don't you just call it Speed Deduction? instead of like speed seduction, and the like. It should have been called speed deduction. I was like, that's amazing, and I'm now claiming that as my own. That's the first time I've ever told anyone that it wasn't actually my title. It was Anthony Jacquin's Pearl of Wisdom at the time, and it just stuck. It was brilliant. Speed seduction, speed deduction. Excuse me.
Very good, very good. Right.
Freudian slip.
Speaking of body language and subconscious, right. Yeah.
She's gone now. It's fine. We can talk real. It's okay.
Okay. All right.
Speaking of her, you did a little mini class that I was in a while back, and in the exercise, you had us taking a look at the snapshot.
Correct.
And at the end, I remember of all of this, you revealed that this, yes, these are the things that are true. And how do I know this? Because this is my fiance and I know her very well. And this is how I know this is true. And that was really, really cool. I enjoyed that.
That's what I love about this type of material. When you're analyzing a video or a photo or something along them lines, it's very difficult to get confirmation that the techniques you're using are working, and it's 100% going directly towards where you want it to. How else could I provide like sort of instant clarification without using her? And that's they form. I say they now collectively. My friends, family, they fall into my lessons a lot because people get to use these techniques, and I can provide instant confirmation in terms of how accurate you are or not. If it's working. It just turned out in the class you guys were spot on the whole time. But yeah, it's great, and it's a joy for me as well, considering I spend a lot of my time working online now. So I still get to look at her and talk about her. It's lovely.
Well, I have to say, if anybody's listening to this and starts Googling, and there's a class that pops up that Ben does, you really ought to sign up for it. You're an entertaining teacher. You present with, the pace is great. You're challenging the students enough to where we feel engaged and kind of drawn in, but also, I don't know, just maybe the flow, the design of the classes, I think are really well done, very elegant, and I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate your kind words. Thank you. It was designed with so much of there's courses everywhere, especially since COVID and the like. But I think that when I wanted to really make mine as personal as I could, it would need to be designed with a way to almost weaponize the knowledge that you've got from just living, from just existing. So much knowledge that you're taught as a case of this is new and how to do it now, and you forget about everything else that you could bring to the table ahead of time. So with this course, you get to bring all of that forward and use your life experience and your life knowledge, as well as all of the other kind of cool tricks and observations that you can use to gain information about dating profiles. At the time, it was called Dating with the Deductionist. We did it with Love with Intelligence, and it was a way to protect yourself within the online dating world and really make as informed a decision as you possibly can in terms of who you are willing to spend your valuable time with, and sort of give them a piece of your vulnerability, because that's capitalized on in equally positive and negative ways at times, which is sad to see.
Yeah, it is. And just to kind of reiterate some of what you said, I mean, the class itself, just for those who are listening, it's a bit like, what kinds of things could you detect or pick up from just looking at a profile itself, so that you can maybe see some of the major landmarks in a person that they're showing you, maybe potentially to avoid problems, online stalking and narcissism and violence and all these kinds of things can arise from well, let's put it this way. You can be put into dangerous situations whenever you're meeting someone you don't know yet. And the class was kind of an introduction to the idea that maybe you could make some decent, educated guesses and perceive what's being shown in such a way that it could protect you as you go into dating. So for those who are either worried about, being harmed in that way and are nervous about getting into the dating world, or on the other end of it, they just want to understand more about the person that they're getting to know, maybe even ask better questions because of it. This is a kind of class that would introduce you to basically the art of, or the skill of profiling.
Well, thank you. Thank you again as well. But the thing that comes up from that in terms of certainly the protective measures that you can take during the creation of said course, there's a lot of back and forth between myself and Lily and Jonam, and we were on a Zoom call one time, and Jonam said to me, "What do you think of this guy?" Now, immediately when somebody poses a question like that to you, your antennas go doing. Straight up, that this isn't going to be your conventional, John Hancock kind of fellow. And using what we were going to teach as part of the course, it was confirmed that I'd managed to figure out that this guy was a child killer. And it was the dating profile of him, and the concerning element, particularly when it comes to profiles, not just on dating websites, Facebook, Twitter, everyone that's got a kind of profile of who and what you are has been uniquely crafted based on how you want to be perceived by the world at large. And the concerning thing from the dating element is there's no way to run background checks at the minute. If you are on any number of registers, you can still set up a dating profile. And this guy who I forget his name, I just remember he was Scoob something on his dating profile. He didn't actually have a criminal record at the time, so it was a way of figuring out as much information as possible about this guy. And based on the way that Jonah asked the question, it was going to be dodgy, as the case may be. And that was my thinking at the end of it, and it turned out to be completely true. He was a Canadian child killer.
Wow,
that's crazy. Yeah. Wow. I think everybody wants to know how to have that skill, to avoid that person in your life.
100%.
Gosh.
And I think there are a lot of people who just are either ignorant to the idea that you could detect those things, or they doubt that it's true. They feel that it's a bunch of BS, and that it's not possible to detect those things, or they assume that all of this is just sort of silliness. And that hasn't been my experience, but Ben, how would you respond to that?
It's completely true. Like, people do tend to fall into those categories a lot of the time, and you tend to see a lot of the it's complete silliness when it comes to people in the magic and mentalism community, for how they purport themselves to be capable of doing such wondrous things, that when somebody shows them something that they immediately don't understand, it's poo-pooed. How dare you be coerced into working hard to achieve something? And so my answer to this is normally the same. It's along the kind of Dunninger line. Whatever you want to believe, you're correct. At the end of the day, you're entitled to your own beliefs based upon whatever worldviews you have. The only thing I can do from my side is tell you about the things that I go through on a day-to-day basis to sharpen these skills, because as of November this year, it'll be 21 years and I've never skipped a day of training ever. The only thing that differs in terms of how long I actually train, because I'm fortunate enough now to be working more within this field, so I don't have to be fastidiously practicing as much. But yeah, in terms of that, I could talk about like the fact that I don't work as much in the mentalism community anymore, because I'm legitimately working as a director of a security company at the moment, doing this on a global basis. I take cases, I assist with the police, and if it were all silliness, they would be the type of people to call you out on that.
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
they're the first people that go, "You're bringing nothing to the table. Go away." Because this is serious. This is, people are harmed in these types of scenarios. So yeah, my short answer is always going to be, you can believe whatever you'd like. It's not my job to convince you, this proverbial you, of the veracity of my skills or not. You can test them all day and all night. I don't claim to be certain about anything, because if we, in reading body language and all of these other non-verbals, if it were certainty, it would be a science. We could apply equations to it and get light years ahead of the outcome based upon that, which we can't do. I think that differentiation in terms of belief comes down to people claiming that they are certain when they can't possibly be certain. I can tell you, this is all of the evidence I've got. This is the conclusion that I've come to based upon this evidence. Do with that what you will.
Yeah. It reminds me a lot of, okay, for example, if you're a highly trained healthcare person in your field, you can just glance at somebody and know that, okay, this person probably had a stroke because of the contracture pattern that you see in their right arm. And you start to piece these things together, and it becomes really quite obvious what happened. Now, could you be wrong? Well, certainly. Maybe it wasn't quite a stroke. Maybe it was a head injury, and it's mimicking a stroke. But the point is, you do something long enough, and you develop a skill. It can appear kind of magical, first of all. But then if you really analyze how you came to that conclusion, it's usually pretty logical. And you can just like, well, there's this, there's that. Don't you see this? Don't you see that? And you start to piece it together, and it's telling you a story. And it sounds like what you do is that. It's just not as familiar to people.
Absolutely. I think that's born out of my love and, I'll be fair, obsession for Sherlock Holmes. Let's be real, right?
Yeah, let's be honest.
And it was Sherlock that was quoted as saying, "A conjurer gets no credit when once he has revealed his secrets. And if I show you too much of my working, you'll see I'm a very ordinary man after all." And in pretty much every story, the police are left baffled, and then Sherlock goes, "It's this, and this," and everyone tends to go, "Oh, okay," and and then carries on. It's just that the sort of the journey, I guess, would be the best word, from observation to conclusion in the real world is just a bit longer than Sherlock makes it look. That's all, because you can never be too even close to too sure when you're only dealing with 2 or 3 observations that point in the right direction. You want like 5, 6, 7 things that are pointing you in the way that you need to be going.
Yeah, it sounds like the collection of evidence. You're collecting evidence to, yeah. Now, to do this sort of set of skills that you have, and considering your obsession with Sherlock, how much of this is stuff that you ended up learning from other people, other sources, and how much of this is stuff that you ended up just discovering out of necessity?
Wow. Oh God. It's got to be an equal measure, because like I am one of these people that I don't discount anything. I've sort of coined my own little phrase in that everything is relevant until it's not. Because I could never really prepare for the situations that I'm going to end up in. I can only prepare for my reaction and my capabilities when I enter into them. So if I come across topics and books and courses, I take them, regardless of whatever the outcome is. at the end. If I got nothing from it, then it's an experience, and I've met new people. Then I've learned some more about this, this cultural dynamic, or the way that this person says this, or this display in this person, So it would be difficult to put a percentage on because the lines are very much blurred. But I can give you an example from the new book that I'm working on, which is a follow-up to the monographs. And so if the monographs if Sherlock Holmes were a real person alive today, how would he do it, sort of thing. The second one is more if House MD were a real person alive today, what would be in his head. So I took a degree in medicine. I got qualified as a doorman, a bouncer, so I could start to put all of this into work. I've got a lot of medical knowledge, just book knowledge, but that's very different to putting it to work with actual human beings that are struggling with something. And so in terms of the work experience that I got there, it's one thing to have your own observations about what they're coming in to see you about, and then they tell you about something completely different. So it's very much learning from the people, but based on books and everything else that gets you there as well. Like somebody tasked me with trying to figure out if it is really possible to differentiate. I think in the home stories, it's like 140 different types of tobacco ash. In BBC Sherlock, it was 143 or something like this. Ridiculous number. And since I can't get into any forensic science labs, that's one of the things that I sought to try myself. So I got a shed outside, and I draft excluders around the side, sellotaped out all of the windows, so everything that would stay in there. And I'm fortunate enough to have friends all over the world at the minute, so I'm sending PayPal receipts and everything to everybody to send me whatever's legal for them to be able to send me through the post in terms of cigarettes and pipes and tobacco. And I sat in a shed for weeks just going through all of these different experiments with cigars, with the way people roll them up, with cigarettes, with pipes, with vapes, and everything else. And I came away with the ability to differentiate 9 different types, no more, no less. But that was foolish on my part because I'm asthmatic, so I was in a bad state for a good long time afterwards.
I was just going to say, and I emerged with a tobacco addiction.
Yeah. Gotta say, I love the dedication.
Yeah,
absolutely love the dedication. You got to dive in. And you never know what you're going to learn, right?
Exactly. I always find that if you come across that thing or that topic or that book or that person, and you immediately think no before you've even tried it, that's the way I rationalize that is that's my mind going, yep, blinkers on. So I can't even learn anything, even if there was the opportunity to learn, because I've already stopped myself from doing it immediately. How do I know until I try? Like there was that classic phrase, how do you know if man's capable of flying until you actually jump? But somebody had to jump for us to understand. We don't fly so very well.
Yeah,
that's the kind of philosophy that I live by. I don't know until I have a go, sort of thing.
There's your principle. Everything is relevant until it isn't.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
That's reminding me of the principle of modeling in NLP. One of the principles of modeling, at least a certain type of modeling, is that you're absorbing pretty much everything about the person, and you don't differentiate. I mean, after you go through the process, you don't really differentiate until you're duplicating the skills. Yeah. And as you're duplicating the skills, then you start to sort of one by one remove the things that you suspect might be peripheral and not necessary. And you see if you can still produce those skills without that trait or attribute until you get sort of a bare bones version of what that skill is.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. My NLP knowledge is limited at best, but I couldn't agree more with that description. It's very virtually scientific in its conclusions. Does this work? No. Okay, well, does this work? No. and then you eventually come down to it. Yeah, that's how I like to live, as best as I can. It keeps me open on an observational level. It keeps me open on an informational level, and at the end of the day, that's what I need to be able to do my job. There was a case that I won't be speaking too much about because I'm not allowed. But we had to travel to Dubai, and I've never been to that part of the world. Never really worked with anybody from the Emirates, or indeed anybody of an Arabic descent at all. And so I'm ferociously reading as much as I can about the culture and the displays and the languages, and the deference and the way you speak politely to others. But it's only really being inside that culture that you can go, okay, so this is the change between friendships, and this is how it works colloquially and the like. And so, yeah, it's I very much agree with that. I like that. I like that sentiment.
Well, I was going to ask, Ben, I in the video that I saw, you were talking about things like a double shoulder shrug versus a single shoulder shrug, and where voice is coming from, and eyelid flutters and things like that. And that was one of the things I was curious about asking is, have you found that there are universal things that all humans show versus things that we have to learn from our culture? Like, for example, in India, they say yes by moving their head like this, right? And so, like, one of the jokes I always make is, you go to a place like Japan and say hello, and then what do you do in the United States? Hey, what's up? Like we do a reverse head bow. So a lot of stuff is learned, yet it seems like there are universal expressions, like of disgust, for example, things like that. What are your thoughts on that, and how has that influenced you, or what do you have to be careful of?
In terms of the universalism, I think you really have to be cautious when it comes to any expectations that you've got that it's going to go one way or the other. It's nice to have that kind of preparedness information in terms of, this is what I could be dealing with at the times, but given live personal reads, in a non kind of psychic demonstration, but when you're actually reading a person, you risk like a version of cognitive bias in that sense, where if you're going to expect, that's not to say it doesn't exist, but if you're going to expect a degree of universalism, then that's going to skewer how you truthfully read the information that's being given to you. In terms of my experience of that, I've found that there are only one or two things that everybody tends to do, like in England and right the way across the board, there's never a real need to learn anybody's name, because whether you are professional or whether you're friends or not, you're a mate, you're a pal, you're a friend, you're a guy, you're a dude, you're a chief, you're one of these things. And so using the use of somebody's name is it tends to have the opposite effect that most influence and persuasion books would tell you that it does. Whereas if, like, I'm talking to somebody out in the streets and they would say, "Oh yes, Ben, I completely." Why are you calling me Ben? It's oddly snooty. Do you not like me?
Got it. Yeah.
This is the cultural differences that you tend to see. So when somebody is from England and they're calling you mate, pal, it doesn't intimate that they haven't got a vested interest in what your identity is and who you are. That's just how we talk, and the like. So in terms of it's a topic that should be a never-ending search, in my opinion, because cultural changes, facial expression changes, and the like, the shrug patterns, the blink rates, any response to any given stimuli is going to change from person to person. Like there are those that express sadness on their face by not moving at all. And there are those that express sadness on the face with the tradition. I can't fake it, but with the traditional eyebrows raised and pulled together, the slackening of the cheeks, the slight depression in the buccinators. The one thing is displayed in a number of different ways. So when it comes to that aspect, in short, I would just urge anybody that's looking to learn more about that to keep it in the arsenal. You know, that if you see this that you've recognized as being linked towards disgust or a notion of asymmetric behaviors and a lack of enthusiasm in what they're saying, keep it on the back burner, and then seek to drive the conversation one way moving forward, so you can confirm, revisit the topics that made that kind of display initially. So if they display the same way again, you start to be able to, you know, do the things that the computers do. You just do them on a visual level as well. It's a lot to keep track of. Do not get me wrong, but that's the risk that you take in shorting yourself of that information to go, I've seen this, therefore it's this. That's the risk that you run. It requires further examination until you can be absolutely sure as you're going to be anyway.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Well, speaking on a variation of that idea, obviously you're referring to sometimes the tendency to just kind of have a knee-jerk response to something because maybe you learned it somewhere, and then you've got this kind of automatic association that you're creating. But sometimes that works to your advantage, right? And my question is around that. Aren't there some times when you just get a sense that you know that something is true without directly noticing the pathway in your mind, how you got to that conclusion? So in other words, how far does intuition enter into what you do? Intuition being defined for this conversation as unconscious pattern recognition. And you sometimes kind of step back and go, I actually don't know how I know this, but I know it.
Yeah, all the time. All the time. And to me, like the way I rationalize that's just the years working for me. I could give you another Sherlock quote. He would say, 2 and 2 is 4. We are quite sure of the fact, and yet it would be difficult to explain why. Which is the exact nature of that working for you. You see a person, you may have just eaten up all of their non-verbal information that they have to give you, and arrived at this conclusion without being kind of consciously aware, on whatever level of the information getting there. Absolutely, the things that I do nowadays, because I've kind of learned the hard way. Initially, I was like, maybe a decade ago, I'd arrive at this conclusion, and in my head I'd be going, no, I need to know why. I need a more sure footing. I need more reliable data. And it would harm conversations. It would harm a performance. It would make it longer than necessary. Anything along those lines. Nowadays, if I'm at something initially that I can't always verbalize straight away, I'll keep going, and I'll seek to test the waters one way or the other, see if there are different scenarios that I can put this person in, where I can force a reaction that would maybe confirm or deny one way or the other. I can get them to give me the information that would confirm or deny one way or the other. So yeah, it's unsettling at times. If you've ever watched my video that I did with shoes, there was it's quite ingeniously entitled "The Shoe Effect."
How creative!
I know. I told you I'm terrible at coming up with names. I need the writers of Elementary to work for me. But yeah, so what I did with that was it was at the Sherlock Holmes Hotel in London. So it's on Baker Street, and there's a sea of about 100 people in there, and it's a fairly informal performance. They just sort of gathered around an opening, And so I was blindfolded from the beginning. So I've sat there with this blindfold on, and it's a genuine blindfold. I'm sat there with this blindfold on, and I'm just listening the whole time, listening. And I've had this on for about half an hour. And so when it comes to the first performance, I kind of take it off, and the light is very bright. And I've gone around and I've taken everyone's name. Blindfold goes back on, and then a couple of people come up and place whatever shoe they feel comfortable taking off onto the table. And so my job is to then get some details about the person whose shoe it is, and then give it back to the exact person that brought it up. And when I'm going through the details about the shoe, that's because that's figuring out like what kind of a house they live in, if they smoke, what kind of a diet they've got, this type of thing, which is fairly, I can explain that ahead of time. But when it comes to the exact person, in my head, I'm just going, it's like a little voice going, it's this one, give it back to this person, listen to me, it's this person, take it over there. And so you'll see on a couple of them, I'm kind of like, is it you? And I'm not 100% confident. And and you know, it turned out, you know, successfully the gods were smiling on me that stage, and it was all correct. But it's an unsettling situation to be in, given my affinity for as scientific a research as I can possibly do within the topics that I'm interested in. So yeah, it's a fun situation, but unnerving at the start.
Sure. Well, yeah, you know, but performing is tough no matter what you're doing. And it sounds like what you're doing is, I mean, it's so in the moment, so live. If you're doing that kind of work, you're taking a lot of risk, you know, when you do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, oh, I'm sorry, you're going to say something?
I was just going to say that's part of the thrill of it for me. That's what keeps me so focused, and what I'm told keeps me so engaging. You know, a number of performers you see do the same patter lines 1,000 times, or they say the same words 1,000 times, and you get that kind of effect from them. That's what I love about the way I work. Like, I'll have an idea of what I want to do, whether it works or not. We'll see. We'll see.
Dopamine rush.
Yeah.
It's a dopamine theme.
I was gonna ask, because a lot of what you do is, you know, gathering data from different categories that I'm sure you have developed and, you know, figured out. Do you ever find yourself learning things about yourself by noticing some of the things that you display? Like, for example, maybe you catch yourself moving, behaving, doing something a certain way, and you recognize, oh, that's that thing that means this. Oh, I didn't realize I was feeling that way. You know what I mean? So, like, how much insight do you gain from that?
On a self-reflective kind of position, it's not until like I've actually finished a performance piece that I get a moment to kind of revisit what it is that I did. Which so it doesn't happen that often, because I'm so sort of my phases are set to observe everybody else that I'm rarely so opportunistic to get to put it back on myself. But in terms of when I am not challenged in a physical sense, but challenged in a performance sense, in a directional sense by a group of males. And everybody knows the type when I say that. A group of guys, a group of dudes, you know, and they're like, every time when I'm challenged by that, I tend to get quite sort of non-verbally confrontational. Which harms the way that it's going to go, and it shouldn't really be perceived that way, because I don't care if you've never looked into non-verbals at all. If somebody's turning confrontational towards you, you'll pick it up.
You know.
You'll, and I'm not a small person. You know, I'm 6'2". I'm 18 stone. Like I'm a big person. So like when thankfully I don't do it as much anymore. But initially when it would happen, I tend to find that, you know, I'm talking this way around and I'm quite animated in how I talk, and then the challenge comes, and then immediately I'm like, and I look at them for a little bit too long. You know, I think the research dictates that we should look away every 6 seconds or so, and I'd hold it till about, you know, sort of 8-10 seconds. And so if I was doing it to this, to my I'll check my glasses are still working. So if I'd sort of hold it like, what was that? You've got a question? And then just hold it for that moment.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't really be doing that. And it was kind of this knee-jerk response, because like I am quite verbally confrontational, not in an argumentative kind of power dynamic way. It's just I don't mind voicing my own opinion about anything to anyone. So when that comes to me initially, and I'm kind of like turning it in, that's not something I should really be doing, because if it's perceived by anyone else, that harms the future work that I'm going to do with them moving forward from there. So yeah, that was definitely one of those moments, and I think it's a very valid point as well, because if you're not reflecting on what you do and how you do it, and you know, where's the room for self-improvement and the like, you know, don't all athletes watch the tape of the game afterwards to learn about what it is that they were doing and how they could improve their form going forwards? So yeah, I think it's a valid point that you've made, to have that opportunity for yourself, and it certainly helped me.
Yeah, you know, of course, you know, I don't have your skill set, right? But there's a similar experience that I had once with a dog.
Right.
Because dogs have the ability to understand all kinds of things about humans that we don't perceive ourselves. And anyways, Carlos, I might have told you this story once upon a time. I'll keep it brief. There was a colleague at work who had a service dog in training.
Right.
And he was in my office, and we were talking about something work-related that was very emotionally charged for him. He was upset about something going on, and he was just kind of confiding in me as a work buddy. Right. And I noticed his dog came over and started chewing on his hand. And we both kind of recognized that, all right, the dog is trying to like de-escalate the situation, distract Daddy from what's upsetting, because the dog clearly knew that Dad is not happy.
Yeah.
And then, like, you know, several days later, a week or so later, we're in the office, and he asked me a question about, you know, something historically in my life, and I started telling him the story. And it was a story that is emotionally charged for me.
Right.
But I wasn't thinking at that moment about my own emotion. And the dog came over and started chewing on my hand the same way that the dog chewed on his hand. Wow. And when I looked at the dog's name was Nike. And I looked down at Nike, and I thought, oh, he's doing the same thing he did to his dad when he was upset. And I realized, oh my God, the dog felt that I was having those emotions before I even recognized it.
Brilliant.
And then I realized it was there, and I'm like, holy smokes, wow, how did that dog do that?
Unreal.
You know, and so I'm like, but I needed a dog, you know. So
everybody should need a dog at some
everybody
point.
should. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. They're useful. They're expensive, but they're useful. Yeah.
Agreed.
The
smart dog.
The concept of going meta, you know, to a situation, you know, like zooming out and witnessing yourself.
Yeah.
You know, some of us do that more than others. Some of us do it probably too much. Some of us never do it and should do it more often. There's always a balance, and obviously context is what determines when it's useful and when it isn't. But I've noticed that there are times when, you know, after learning about a lot of this body language stuff, that I will be engaged with someone in a conversation, and I will slip out mentally into kind of a meta position.
Right.
And then I become hyper aware of every gesture and every, facial expression, and it's fucking distracting. And I have to kind of pause for a moment because I'll feel this sort of kind of a sweat coming on. Like I'm getting this discomfort, this nervousness that kind of arises. And then I have to take a breath and kind of reorient myself back into just getting involved in the communication.
Yeah.
Because there's a kind of a fine line between, when you're being intentional about something versus totally artificial about it. Do you know what I mean? I mean, as a professional presenter, as you and I are, actually all of us are here, we have learned that there are certain tonalities and rhythms and postures and things that will bring the awareness of who's listening in certain ways into certain directions. And that's useful. It's helpful. That's being a good presenter, a good teacher, a good coach, or whatever it is, performer even. But I do find that sometimes I have to kind of rein it in a little bit because my mind will I'll lose track if I don't.
Yeah.
And there's a point where you have to kind of let go and let the unconscious training kick in and just sort of surrender to, what we call flow, right? High performance state, right?
Yeah.
Where your ego is not really involved. You kind of just kind of let go into the experience. How does that play in? Have you ever noticed that you've gone meta, just even a conversation with your sweetheart at home?
Yeah, many times. Like, I with my training, I tend to base it around Bruce Lee and his philosophy on combat, and the like. But there's a lot of times when if I am if I've had a physically or mentally taxing moment, but you get that kind of kind of reaction to whatever it is that you've just done. If I'm ever in a moment, but you've still engaged me on something, you could have set me on fire, and I probably wouldn't even notice at the time, because I'm all in here. What my body's doing, what your body's doing, not the words that you're saying or anything else, but that's my own kind of particular dead zone, if you will. When I kind of I'm all up here. I'm with you on that one, and I'm looking at the way her eyebrows move and where she's breathing from, which nostril flexes more because one's pierced and the other isn't, and then that little voice in my head is going, "What are you doing? None of that is relevant. Listen to what she's saying, because she will destroy you if you don't." And then that will bring me back in those moments now. But yeah, like from a philosophical level, I read a lot of Stoicism. I read a lot of Epictetus and Aristotle, Aurelius, and the like. And there's one of the stories. I think it was even used in a film, but I forget which film. It was in Law Abiding Citizen. And that Marcus Aurelius would have somebody behind him as he's going through the crowds just to whisper in his ear, "You're only a man. You're only a man." And so for when I'm in these moments, when I'm trying to do more than what I'm told I am capable of, that's the type of stuff that keeps me in the zone and keeps me focused in these moments, that I've taken the time to sort of take care of myself so that I can do it for others and those around me. So yeah, those are the. I know that's technically not what you asked, but those are the differences that I've found between the two. Stoicism very much keeps me grounded and present, but when my physicality takes over, I'm done. Like I'm spent at that time. That's not a time for me to be training. That's a time for me to be reading something I enjoy, watching something I enjoy, doing something I enjoy, something along those lines, because I'm passive to the whole thing. Yeah.
I just want to comment here because you mentioned Stoicism, which is a wonderful, wonderful path. A friend of mine pointed out, and I really loved how he put it. He said, that should be basic training for every young man. I mean, and I would just put the caveat that basic training for every Western trained young man, because there are other pathways in other countries and of origin, and Buddhism, for example, is a wonderful path. And Satch and I are both, adherents and students of the Dhamma, right? We study that path, and it has affected us a lot. And there's a lot in common with Stoicism, but Stoicism is just so rich. And I didn't really gain any real genuine appreciation for it until maybe the last 5-6 years. I started to go, I'm going to dive a little bit more into this. And I started reading more, like Marcus Aurelius Meditations and just various articles. And I found it more and more that, man, this stuff, if I had started with this idea, I think I would have avoided quite a lot of the problematic thinking patterns that I had developed in my adulthood. I mean, I was obviously doing the best I could with what I had, but you know what? This would have been a wonderful guide along the way.
100%.
Powerful stuff.
100%. And the book that I found to hit it on the head from kind of a modern day perspective was Darren Brown's Happiness. I don't know if you've read it.
No, I read his other book.
It's based on that work. I think it's called Happiness: How More or Less Everything is Okay. And it's really rooted and grounded in that kind of emotional struggle that most Western young men tend to go through. And like the greatest kind of aha moment that I got for myself in terms of it working for me was as a tall young man going out in the town, you're targeted by anyone who's looking for a fight.
Yeah.
And so my friends are over in the corner and, oh, this guy's just said this about you. He's just called you this. Okay. Well, what are you going to do? What? Nothing. Why? I couldn't really understand that. Well, he's just called you a dickhead. Okay. I'm not. So why should that matter? And that was the kind of greatest sort of, okay, I've definitely got some kind of control over how I choose to spend my emotional credit,
right?
Who I choose to spend it with, and I think that's definitely a teachings that everybody could find some value in if you hadn't undertaken it to a certain degree, or at least been born with an unnatural kind of control over your emotions that way, as well. Yeah, well, uniquely beneficial.
That principle of seeking to understand and like look when a person criticizes you, to look within yourself rather than to look to defend yourself from, say, how is this true, and how is this an opportunity to look deeply within myself for some error, whether or not you are actually detecting the error or not. It is an opportunity, and it steals the fight right out of the circumstance. And I've seen when I teach kids about bullying, one principle I teach them is, what if you helped them? So what if you, like Satch and I study martial arts, and our teacher would say, they knock on the door, you answer. Sometimes they knock on the door and you answer a little too much and they fall through the door, that kind of idea. And so if someone insults you and you help them to insult you, it gets to the point of ridiculousness after a while, and it completely steals their thunder. Anyway.
100%, 100%. The first time I ever taught a group of doormen, because I too have grown up around martial arts as well. And the first time I was lucky enough to teach a group of doormen, I did so using Roadhouse as sort of my vehicle for study. And there was that one particular scene where Patrick Swayze's meeting the new team. I don't care if he does this, be nice. I don't care if he does this, be nice. I don't care if he does this, be nice. And then one of them blails out, well, what if he calls your mother a whore? And Patrick Swayze comes back and just goes, is she? And that's one of those moments, which is the same thing. You're just taking that fight out of the whole situation together completely, because if you don't have a leg to stand on from a violent indicator, that's how they're built. You talk about temperatures rising when they go the other way, everything's cool and the like, and language follows suit. Completely. I could swim in a world of Stoicism all day. Absolutely.
You're an idiot. Oh, you have no idea how idiotic I can be sometimes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And they'll go,
Let me tell you about this one time.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so long as you know you are. I do. Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I think people in call centers would probably benefit from a study around this material, given the verbal abuse they tend to get at times.
Oh, true.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
I almost wanted to take out a hit on my call center person that I was calling last night over my television that started blipping out on me. I kept getting asked the most ridiculous things, and I would answer the person, and then of course they would ignore this long answer I just gave them and ask me as if I hadn't answered it already. So
what the next question on the list is.
Oh my God. It's always at the worst time, it's always when technology is on the blink,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You find that those, I don't know if that's a clouding of emotional reasoning, that when one thing goes wrong, everything else seems to go wrong. You hit every red light on the drive in, and it's all a matter of perception and where your focus is going. And they're like, yeah, it's
damn that Murphy. His blasted laws.
Yeah, he breathed it into life,
Absolutely.
Asshole.
Yeah. Oh, it's funny.
So I was thinking about two things here. One, that there are a lot of topics in which the person who gains the skill appears to be making these quantum leaps of perception. They appear to be doing something supernatural. It seems impossible to the let's say rational person who doesn't have the experiential knowledge. And there's a lot of this skepticism that arises. We kind of touched upon this a little earlier, but you see this in examples of excellence. I mean, you're obviously an example. You're an exemplar of behaviorism and behavioral profiling and perception and deduction and things like that. But there are also magicians who maybe do things like this, right? Mentalists who arrange scenarios in such a way that they appear to be like this. And there are people who do, for example, like partly that, and then they deviate from that and do it the other way. So where have you fallen in that category? Have you experimented with the sort of mentalism routines and gone into this, or did you skip onto the development of the skill itself? How does that fall?
Yeah, it tends to be a bit of both. Like, I will try and rely on my genuine ability to do it as much as possible, comfortable in the fact that should I start to struggle, there are a million different ways that I can get out of it and still provide the performance spectacle piece that I've been paid to bring. So in terms of that, it depends on where I'm going, really. Like if I'm ever invited to some sort of nightclub affair or some place that's where booze is very much focused on, then getting people to think, regardless of my skills, for too long is a challenge. So I tend to keep it to the more mechanical pieces at the time. But when I have room to really flex my gray matter, I shall absolutely do so. Like without getting into the mechanics of how they work, you take like a simple drawing duplication, and you ask somebody to. They think of a drawing, and you draw anything you want so long as it's easily recognizable. Bang, fair enough, and they do it. But imagine being able to tell them, draw something that is a big part of your day. Draw the way you feel about your job. Something along those lines. That once I have that, the drawing itself then gives me like a virtual deductive hot read. In that kind of scenario, I've got eons of information to deal with in terms of what they do on a day-to-day basis. And like, if I can see that they don't particularly like their job, from the drawing. If I ask them what they do for a living and they tell me, I know there'll be a certain level of reflexive characteristics in terms of positive or negative that will tell me everything else about somebody else in terms of how they're reading it. Like the cleanest example I can give you is from a guy that I met doing one of these online things. I don't really like doing the online shows because it feels a bit tacky, but that's rather here nor there. We were doing an online show, and I'd figured out what he'd drawn, and it was about his job. And so I just asked him, "Do you like your job?" And he said no. And he worked in like a cubicle center for selling insurance. There's him and like thousands of other people there. So I'm thinking in my head in terms of, all right, so what does that represent? That's enclosure. That's being boxed in on a thinking level. You know, he wants room to breathe, room to grow, room to go and do things, room to explore. So I started talking about his hobbies and his interests, and immediately he goes, all right, like this. So there you go. There's a non-verbal version of a guy going, right, let's dance, sort of thing. So that's the Jonam question again, all over again. These non-verbals have told me that this is going to be obscure, something I don't think that's particularly attached to him. So I went, you're an artist of sorts, and you're dabbling with changing perspectives at the moment. I absolutely finished him because the guy was like a weightlifter at the time. But I could tell from his displays that he wasn't traditional kind of Neolithic knuckle dragger kind of weightlifter. He was, which a lot of them are. I think even they would be okay with me saying it. A lot of them are. He wasn't all about that. So it was this kind of visual exterior that he doesn't really get a chance to nurture that side of him. And what's going to be more counterintuitive to that lack of nurturing than being stuck in a box all day? Yeah. So I was thinking around artistic sides, and that's the way that kind of deductive line works for me now. So it's like a metronome thing. Sometimes it's over here, sometimes it's over here. But like the good thing about it is the way I've kind of developed my own routines is they are free enough that they can be that. They're free enough that they can be that. I can just take out all of the extra kind of observational stuff, and at the end, I've got a 5-minute pretty cool trick that I can show anyone. Yeah, it comes back to my adage on performance. Like, I'm a big believer in this type of thing being down to artistic license. There was kind of a big discussion on whether it's art or something else. I fall into the art category in terms of my beliefs. So when I used to lecture my material, I would encourage people to, like, what are you? Are you a mentalist, or are you just a likable guy that knows where to shop? And like that's the distinction that I would encourage people to draw. Don't get me wrong, neither way is wrong, neither way is right. But once you figure out what it is that you are, then your material, your performance changes around that. And I wasn't the likable guy that knows where to shop and just buying a trick and going out and doing it, regardless of how good the trick is. I wanted to investigate it. I wanted to explore it and see what other things I could do with it. Like, when is a witch hand routine not a witch hand routine? When is something with cards not about it coming back to the top again in 1,000 times in many unique and weird and wonderful ways? That's the type of thing that I find really encouraging in terms of my performance. Most of the times I'll tend to decide on the day. So I'll take a few things with me. I'd love to mess around with cards because as soon as you get it, I'm looking around for some now. As soon as you get some out, people immediately go, I know what he's going to do. And they're still in the box. Like, you've not done anything yet at this stage. But that's the kind of thinking that you're dealing with. So, like, when people start to get grabby and what if I shuffle them? Do what you want. Well, it doesn't really matter to me. And so to have that kind of character about what it is that I do stops challenges. Everyone's on my side. There's no kind of spectator magician kind of divide. Everyone's on the same team having a great laugh. And that's what I want from my kind of performances. Yeah, it's not for everybody, but if everybody did everything in the same way, then it'd be boring, right?
Do that.
So yeah, very much it tends to chop and change. See how I'm feeling that day. See how I'm feeling the crowd that day.
That's great. And if I had a security team for some, multi-million-dollar company, and I needed to figure out, what was happening, there's some crime that happened, and I had you on my team, I would love the fact that you were also a magician, that you also had, training in deception and all these kinds of things, in addition to the behavioral profiling and all the other things and the deduction, because, the game theory involved in magic and mentalism it's genius. It's pure. It's just such brilliance. I mean, I can, it tickles my brain even to think about it. It's a lot of that stuff I've been studying and have not gained any real skill at, because I've just been more of a hobbyist, just kind of looking into it for years and years and years. So I know about those things that I cannot do. But when I think about how much ingenuity is involved in the layering and how many steps ahead the person is in order to create the illusion, it's just mind-blowing. And I would want someone with that kind of, we'll call it comfortability, if that's a word, at those methods and that kind of thinking, in addition to the real world practical stuff that has to do with, what we were talking about at the beginning of the episode.
Absolutely.
Those two things together make an ideal combination.
Absolutely. And there was an article gone around recently on the thinking of a magician being used in politics and the like.
Yes.
I think it was a BBC article.
I actually posted that article on LinkedIn.
That's probably where I saw it then. But yeah, I think the reason largely that magicians are seen to be so clever and so amazing and the like, it's not that they're any smarter than anybody else. It's just that they think about the same problem in a very different way. And I think that's such a valuable resource to have in any kind of problem-solving method, because there's years and years of conventional thinking brought to the table in terms of how to do this or how to accomplish X and so on and so forth, until the magician comes along and says, why don't we try this way? Brilliant. How can you convince somebody that a card can pass through lots of other cards to come back to the top? And everybody else will be like, well, the magician comes up and goes, well, you never really put it back in the middle. And the whole thinking falls away. I think it's brilliant in terms of when I've ever sat down to like a puzzle book or a riddle book, or a different kind of Rubik's cube and the like, because those are the things that I love. In order for me to be able to complete them, I've never done the study on it. I've not crunched the numbers, but I would bet that it's my years of experience in magic and mentalism that helps me to solve them quicker.
Yeah.
And more directly, for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like there's just different styles of thinking strategies that once you learn something, you go, oh, wait a minute, I could probably apply that to this and this and this and this, and there's all these different things in life, Ben, I'm an occupational therapist. Okay, so one of the things that we do is we help people that are disabled be able to do things again. Right. And when you get used to helping people solve problems around what they can't do and how to do it, you start to realize, and this is something I've been thinking about a lot recently, is that the human mind is complex for most animals, right? So we're always looking for a more complex solution to something. And naturally, there are complexities that go far beyond what the human mind can handle, right? But we also have the opposite problem, where sometimes the answer is simpler than we are willing to think through. And it's like, yeah, I can't solve this because it's not complicated enough. and so we skip right over the problem. Like, for example, here's a really good one, right? This is occupational therapy thinking, right? Is somebody's got back pain or weakness or whatever. How are they going to solve this problem of getting all the spoons and forks from the dishwasher into the drawer? Well, nobody thinks just pick up the little spoon rack and set it up on the counter by the drawer and then just put it in while you're standing there. Like, again, boom, there it is. You're like, that's so easy. You know, then you go, wait a minute, what else is easy? You know, and it's just funny how that is. You go, oh my God, I've been making it hard for years, you know?
Absolutely.
So
the amount of times you hear, "It can't just be that."
Yeah.
but it is. Why can't it just be that? Why can't it?
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Absolutely. Like when I tell people about everything that like I read, and I'll phrase it specifically so it sounds longer than what it is. Like if I'm talking about a book, like I'll say, I read this, and I'm just citing particular chapters, like, so rather than just saying one book, I'm specifically phrasing it so it's longer. God, how'd you do all that? I've just got a good memory. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but how? No, that's it. that's it. That's all you really. And like people sort of expect this kind of, well, it can't just be that reaction. It can't be. Why? Why can't it be? Because your emotions are telling you otherwise. Yeah, absolutely. Love that. I'd love that it's being brought, that particular way of thinking, to everyone. As you know, as far reaching as it can go, because it's going to provide such a benefit that to separate those dark clouds of sort of not necessarily negative thinking, but like well, I suppose it is, but like more short-sightedness in terms of what your capabilities are, regardless of, you know, the kind of difficulties that you've had to go through to engineer that kind of thinking in the first place. But just to help them see through that is amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
That reminds me of an article I read. It was written by a veterinarian about why is it, like, let's finally get to the bottom. Why do dogs eat grass? And there's all these theories. Well, they eat it because their stomach is upset, or they eat it because it helps them vomit, right? And they said, well, all the studies are indicating that that's not true, because dogs eat grass all the time when they're not sick, when they're sick. And so after this big old long article, you get to the end, and then, you know, the veterinarian says, you know, and there's another possibility is maybe they just like it. That's true. They just like it. Maybe that's like, it's not that complicated. You know, they like
Exactly.
Grass. You know, some people like beer, you know, like, because we like it. You know?
I was just going to say that, Satch, like the aliens. Why do they drink so much tequila that they vomit?
Yeah.
Because
it's
I
fun.
Like it.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Well, and speaking of you know, sharing things with, you know, with everyone, I saw that you have a YouTube video on the memory castle method.
Yes.
Now, I haven't watched it, but am I correct in assuming that are you teaching the method on your YouTube channel there, how to do it? Or
well, that's a podcast episode talking about the course that I'm running on how to do it.
Okay. Is that an evergreen course?
No,
meaning it's recorded and people can.
I see. In which case, it will be if you're a part of the group that you join. But in terms of like it going out en masse, it's not something that we're going to be doing until it's put into book form. But the general reason for it is that 9 times out of 10, when somebody comes across my work for the first time, this is one of the 3 questions that they always ask me about: is the memory castle, the memory palace, the mind palace, the mind attic, whatever you want to call it, and whether it can actually be done, how it's done, this type of thing. And so I thought I would create something of potential permanence for those that are interested in it, to be able to develop it for yourself. Now, don't get me wrong. It's one of those things that is knacky, you know, sort of fiddly to be able to do. and you very much have to commit to its creation. But in terms of the benefit that it has for you, I'm trying to sound as unbiased as I possibly can when I say that it's perception altering, it's life altering in terms of the information you think you're capable of dealing with. You know, what if everything just became easier for you on an informational level?
Yeah.
You know, and the memory palace can definitely do that for you. You know, when you look at the sort of surface level details, when you're looking at of names or restaurants that people like to go to, things you did or said last time you were there, the present that somebody points out that they would like for a birthday gift randomly as you're walking by a shop, and you know, the kids, the names of the kids, this new business partner you've got, or you know, when their birthday is, when your next meeting is, all of this kind of surface level detail. If you could take that up instantly and have it be something that you could call on whenever you needed it, it should be worth it for the 5 sessions that you commit to it alone. But then you think of everything else that you can lay on top in terms of, if you take the time to commit historical data. You know, if you want to go and I always, because it's very popular where I'm from, if you ever want to go and nail a pub quiz, I went through 3 trivia books in one day and just stuck the facts in there, and they still haven't gone to this day because I've stored them properly. It's a way to really expand what you're capable of remembering in one sitting. And there are a ton of techniques that can do that for you. And you know, if you are wanting to memorize a lot of a single stream of information, then the techniques will do it for you. They will, and you can get them from any good book that you can pick up. You absolutely can. But when it comes to the work on a memory palace, there is the kind of guided thought that it doesn't really bode like a kind of how much time you would need to put in versus what you get out of it. So I spent just over 3 years on mine, and I've got it down to teachable within 5 days. And like I taught my son the periodic table in half an hour, like 4 years ago. Awesome. And he can still remember it to this day. And there's loads of my students that have got this working for them on the day-to-day basis. My oldest student, not in terms of age, but in terms of how long he's been with me, I refer to him as the constructionist, because he's a builder. He works on building sites and the like. And so when it comes to the list of suppliers that he has to deal with, the orders that he has to deal with, the people that he has to deal with, who's getting what from where and how much, and who needs what invoice, be able to deal with that immediately without constantly going through whatever kind of notebook or phones that you've got to have it there readily on tap, is something that he still talks about every time that I meet him. You know, it's I think I said it in oh no, the trailer's not gone out, but I'm going to say it in a trailer that's coming out. Your life doesn't have to end when your battery life does, you know, because you're still capable of dealing with all of the information that life would throw at you. And if it is that you are skewered towards the way of people reading and this kind of non-verbal you know, information and decoding and the like, having more room inside of your head to store that information for better use is only going to make your job easier. If I have to recall the details on blink rates, leg crosses, blocking, cultural dynamics, speech patterns, when you said it, how you said it, what you did when you moved, temperature in the room, what it's changed, are you hungry, and like all of this can go on within a couple of minutes of conversation. To have to deal with all of that, I'm going to need somewhere to store all of that kind of information so I can come back to it if I need to have that kind of self-reflective moment afterwards and revisit the read, as it were, so I don't get too caught up. The memory palace is a gift that keeps on giving. And again, I'm trying not to sound as biased in my opinion of that, because obviously I'm going to be to some degree. I spent 3 years on it.
Sounds like you really hate this technique. I can feel the seething wrath that you feel towards it, and of no use whatsoever to anyone.
That's underneath the camera. I'm just slowly shredding up memory books. That's all. Slowly shredding them up.
Well, this is an ancient technique, isn't it? I mean, it goes back to the ancient Greeks, right?
It does. It does. Starts with I think his early recording as Simonides. And the like, and that infamous story of him walking around his temple after it collapsed, and naming where everybody had unfortunately died underneath the rubble, so their families could at least grieve at the proper mound of rubble. And the technique was born from there. I know it's in a lot of Egyptian texts as well, but I can't actually pronounce them names, so I'm not going to try. There was I think it was an Italian book, Rhetorica ad Herennium, or something along these lines, that sort of brought along the memory palace technique in the growth of Galileo and his scientific expeditions that he made around this moment. So yeah, the technique's been around for years and years. There's this grander thinking that, sorry, every time I work, my puppy's here. She wants to come and get involved.
Yeah.
Every time.
I see that tail wagging. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can see it.
She's gone. Lex, come say hi. No, she's here.
There she is.
Hey.
That's Lexi.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sweetheart.
Okay, that's your 15 seconds, baby. You go down.
Now she's famous.
So yeah, but the guiding thought with memory palaces initially, that they were just small little non-connected rooms or journeys that you could go on and store specific information on for whenever you need it. What I've done, and I don't say that arrogantly, I say that out of ignorance, because I don't know if anybody else has done it, and I've tried to find out if it does exist. Happy days. But what I've done is I've made the technique connectable to any kind of housing estate. My memory palace is my old college and high school connected together. And then it's, instead of it being the journey that you would walk on, it's objects within the room. So like in my history room, if I need data on any specific kind of person, there's a run of busts with each of the information on the shelves. And if I ever want anything from art or music, I don't have to go on these little journeys to get there. I can just be in the room. Like if I want something from my living room of this house, I can go to the living room and get the information that I need. If I want something from my bedroom, I don't have to think, okay, I've got to go out of the living room, turn right up the stairs, go up 13 steps. I don't have to think any of that. I can just go up to my bedroom and get the information that I need. And so I've applied that kind of method to the creation of a memory palace. So it's cut away at the clay. To use Bruce Lee, a sculptor doesn't add clay to the mold. He chips away until the truth is revealed. And that's what I try to do with the memory palace stuff. I've kind of chipped away at everything that isn't as necessary in order to make sure that your retention is still just as permanent, but your capability to deal with it on a more speedier level would be improved, which is certainly more beneficial towards what I do. Because if you look at memory competitions, for example, where they deal with eons of data, it's in a focused environment where they'll get sound cancelling headphones. Some of them even wear blinkers and the like, and you're just dealing with decks of cards or numbers or words or names and faces and the like. The way this technique differs from the ones that they use is that this is more predisposed towards life, because I would have to memorize the details of people, of cars, of license plates as they drove past, and have all of the sound of life and everything else going on around me. I still have to maintain engagement and have a conversation. So I need a technique that would be able to consume all of this data, store it permanently for use at a later date without it hindering anything that I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. And so that's really where the creation of the technique comes from.
Well, here's a question for you about that. First, have you read Aleister Crowley's Liber 777?
I haven't. I have heard of it, but I haven't read it.
So you know what it is, right? And for those who don't, it's a book that's all association, numerical associations in relation to the mystical Kabbalah. So gematria is the attributions of letters and numbers to concepts and ideas. And it's based on the idea that everything could fit in the schema of the tree of life. And so for those who know, it's like this kind of image, it's kind of a geometrical image that looks roughly tree-like or body-like. And each of the positions has a different meaning and represents different sort of forces in the universe or whatever. But it said that everything can fit into the schema of the tree of life. If one already had those associations, like in my case, I've attributed the tarot cards to each of the positions of the tree and things like that. Is that enough of a schema, I guess, to use as a pattern for this memory palace, or would you recommend coming up with something totally different than that?
In terms of the housing unit, if you've got enough separate kind of compartments of whatever your particular schema is, then that's absolutely fine, because with memory work, you never want to be in the position of thinking, what did Ben say it was? You want to focus on your own idiosyncrasies in terms of how you bring those to the table. Like mine comes in terms of numbers and the like. There's several kind of phonetic alphabets and PAO systems that you go through to turn numbers into images and the like. But when it comes to things like 31, which, there's all of this other stream of information would tell you it's this. 31 for me will always be the Griffin residence from Family Guy, because they live at 31 Spooner Street. And when I come to seeing 742, that'll always be the Simpsons, because they live at 742 Evergreen Terrace, and the like. And even if that's not the address, it is for me in my head. I hear 742, I think of the Simpsons. So I don't tend to question it. And there's hundreds of examples like that. But in terms of what you're bringing to the table on an association level, it's more about understanding how you use those associations with the information that you get from a day-to-day basis. It's the storage that's important of that. And there was an American memory champion that described it for me really, really quite eloquently. Was if you were to get a finite piece of information like a deck of cards, and you were to just throw them up in the air, you would be able to find exactly what you needed after a while. Of course you would. Or it would take a bit longer than necessary, or there'd be studies, they'd be looking over information that you don't necessarily need at that time. But if you take the time to store it correctly and make sure that it's in an order, a stack that and spread out face up on the ground, as soon as somebody says 3 of clubs, you can go, oh, information's there. That's what I need. So if you've got the associations, bringing those to the table, absolutely, that's 100% cool. It's the storage of those details that's the important thing that you would need to take away from it in terms of going, I've seen this, I need to save this for later. Where do I put this on my tree? How do I store it? What information do I use to store it? What information do I attach? How do I attach it to the initial association that I'd made, so that when I need it, I can retrieve it properly? That's the type of detail that you would look to go for from your preset associations that you've already got, because that capitalizes on how you think already, which when it comes to memory work is 150% the best situation to be in. Because like if you think in terms of like on purely what our brains do as an active connection, I hear a song, I might think of a random memory from my childhood. You might hear the same song and be completely unaffected by it if you've not heard it before, or think of what the words say or how that means something to you, and then it might take you off on another kind of journey from that same sort of initial stimuli. So the storage of that information becomes the important thing in that regard. The association, so long as it means something to you and you know, like, irrefutably what that information what that association means, then you're good to go from there. You've done a lot of the legwork already.
Great. I'm inspired.
Yeah. Sounds like you're using a lot of procedural memory. You know, like the next thing to remember reveals itself. Yeah. When the time comes up, like you don't have to memorize a list of these are all the things I need to do in order to get my car started. Well, what's the first thing on the list? Unlock the door. And then what do I do? Pull the handle. You know what I mean? The next thing tells you what the next thing is, which tells you what the next thing is, you know, kind of a, you know, spatial and.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a number of different factors rather that go at factions is an entirely different thing. Factors that
different set of memories.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That's a lot of PTSD that I'm still trying to bury. But yeah, there's a lot of different factors that go into that, and it comes back to your storage again. Like if you have a favorite film, for example. And somebody goes, "Oh yeah, do you remember this part?" You go, "Yep, I remember it instantly," and then go forward in terms of a narrative journey from there. You don't have to start at the opening credits and then go, "Yes, the enjoyment, it's there," and then keep going, because you've taken the time to store that recollection of the film and what it meant to you and these particular plot points and how that affected you. The more areas of our brain we can engage in our memories and how we store anything, the more retentive we're going to be. So there is at the beginning very much a procedural storage unit for how you do it. But after a while, once you've been memorizing in this way, like I won't see numbers anymore. I'll see people. I won't see names in my head anymore. I'll see ridiculous attachments that I can shove into their face, which sounds a lot more evil than what it is, because it's all going on up here. If I'm dealing with any kind of Sherlockian relevancies or any information to do with body language and people reading, I'm in my science room literally cutting mannequins up just to have a look to see what's going on inside, and the like. And that's where I find my information there. And it's great if you ever tell anybody the stories of the connections that you're making, because they would probably have you committed. Yeah. They sincerely would. The amount of times I've been memorizing cards for a competition and just had to chuckle to myself because Hitler's molesting Chuck Norris, and then they've gone on to do this. And I'll qualify that with Hitler is my ace of hearts, and Chuck and Chuck Norris is my 9 of clubs. So the amount of times they've sort of fallen. There's many weird and wonderful, wacky stories that come along with it. So it changes your attitude towards learning and towards growth. It becomes less of a chore and more of an enjoyable journey that way, because you get to think of some, quite frankly, ridiculous things, but equally be gifted with all of the information that you need on top of that. I was in a very important meeting quite recently, and a quick little rundown of how you memorize names. One of the ways of how you memorize names is you take a standout feature of a person's face and you attach some kind of image of what the name represents, and shove it into their face or onto their face. So if you were doing my name, Big Ben, you might think of Big Ben, the clock in London and the like, or any other kind of famous Bens, Uncle Ben from the food, something like that. And it might be that in this scenario, my beard stands out, or my glasses, or my tattoos, and you'd attach the two images together so that when you saw me again, you'd see the beard and wonder why Uncle Ben, the guy from the curry. Oh, okay, Ben, that's Ben. And I was talking to this guy, and he had quite a big nose, Even he was okay with that. He'd made several jokes about it at this stage. He had quite a big nose, but his name was Richard. And maybe you'll be ahead of me already at this stage.
I am.
So for the entire meeting, I'm having to speak to him like this.
Yeah.
I can't stop seeing this thing just flopping from his nose.
Wow.
And to this day, I would bet I will never forget his name ever, because that'll be the first thing that I'll see when I look at his
I will
face.
never forget his name.
Either will I. Yeah.
This must make dream interpretation really interesting for you in your own dreams,
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Goodness.
Absolutely. The amount of times that I like, because it's a conversation me and Maddie we like to have, because we equally think of some really weird stuff, just weird stuff. And but the most recent one that I can remember is air hockey and the like. So the pucks on the table.
Yeah.
So there was that kind of setup, but it was pool, billiards and the like. So there's a ton of spots and a ton of stripes, but they're all air hockey pucks. And I'm playing billiards with these air hockey tables, but I'm playing with the cartoon Hercules. And the like, and like I'm the more and more I explain this scenario to Maddie, the more I can see her thinking, how quickly can I get a divorce?
Yeah.
And then I had to explain this was how I was storing the image for the images for the 12 labors of Hercules and the like, and how all these particular pucks had detail on. Like I couldn't attach images rationally in my head to round balls. I had to make them flat, so I had to give them a purpose. And she kind of you saw when you hear something confusing, you tend to do this. What? You do the dog tilt.
Yeah.
Yeah. You could see it kind of reorientate back to reality as I was. Oh, okay, I get it. I get it now. But it was a fun story to tell. Maddie's got no excuse. She thinks of some equally strange stuff, but she's got no excuse because she's not involved in this kind of memory work at all.
Yeah.
She's just nuts.
How did you meet your sweetheart?
Through Tinder. Unapologetically, but that's kind of how I know firsthand that this kind of dating profile reading works. Because at that stage, being divorced and having like a treasure trove of terrible relationships behind me, I kind of become quite jaded at the whole nature of being in relationships. I was quite happy, just me and the dogs sat at home doing what we do. Like I didn't need to acquire that kind of companionship. I was there. I was okay, but I was scrolling through, swiping the opposite way. I think it's swiping left. It's been that long. Swiping left, just no, and then just this big beautiful smile comes on, and that's one of my things. I love a good smile. I think that comes from the fact that my bottom teeth are terrible. I knocked all 4 of them out when I was a child, and only 3 grew back, and I've had problems with them ever since. So I tend to focus on other people's beautiful smiles, and she was just sat there so unapologetically her, and I really responded to that straight away from the photo, like, because she's, people smile, even if it's a teethy smile, people smile like and it's kind of half-arsed on photos. Yeah. Like Maddie on her photo was like this. And you could tell it was genuine. And then I read a bit about her. We had similar interests, like we both like rock climbing, bouldering, and that kind of thing. She's head to toe covered in tattoos, which I like in a woman, on a personal level. And so, yeah, we started speaking ahead of time, and she remarked like, on my skills as a mentalist. And this was like a couple of weeks after we'd been dating, and she's like, I've never give anybody my number that fast at all. Well, what can I say? Must be our connection. She was like, you did something, didn't you? No. But yeah, she's it's one of those things. Like we've been together 3 years now. We're getting married just before our 4th year together, and we've never had a crossword said to each other at all. Never a disagreement, never anything. And I think that's such a rare thing for relationships nowadays. Not that it doesn't go on, but everybody seems to bicker and point score, and you do this so I can do this. You have your time on the Xbox or the PlayStation so I can do this, and that kind of back and forth. And it's just, it's just with us, it's just two grown-ups talking about things. Don't be wrong, if that's not to say one of us doesn't piss the other person off, but we'll just have a conversation about it. You did this today and I think you're a dick. Oh, I'm sorry. So let's talk about it and carry on from there, as opposed to getting offended. I didn't do this, and
you're on the same team.
Exactly. Yeah, we're on the same team. Absolutely. Because I like that. We're on the same team. We're working towards that goal together of having a life together. Why would you want to work against each other to get towards that? Yeah, I love that. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
and
your team member may need you to speak up when you need something to be different, and that particular person, if they're on the same team, would want the same end result. Therefore, they would hear it out and deeply consider that.
Absolutely.
Makes sense.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, trust. I love it a bitch. 100%. She's very much the one, the proverbial one. I as soon as I start talking about her, I start to stutter because I get very uncomfortable talking about mushy stuff. But like I really feel that for her because she's amazing and I love her to bits.
Well, you're in good company here, Satch.
Good.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Good.
Yeah, we like the mushy stuff.
Yeah. We love love.
It's very manly. Mushy is manly.
I agree. It takes a great degree of vulnerability to be able to talk about that confidently. One of the first films. Sorry, there's a fly buzzing around. Okay. One of the first films we watched together was Moulin Rouge, and those kind of epic love stories, Moulin Rouge, Romeo and Juliet, and there's a few others. But we absolutely love what. Yeah, we have these sort of moments where we're just talking to each other afterwards, like about certain parts or certain songs, and it's just really nice, just to have that kind of conversational connection.
Yeah, I mean, we got to bring badassness to romance, right? So,
absolutely.
Yeah, and with all the tattoos that you both have, it's naturally badass, right? So, just like, if you see this tattoo, right? I can be as mushy as I want, right?
Exactly.
License.
Yeah.
Exactly. I might start talking about it like.
Yeah.
That's about as sort of pseudo masculine as I get. I'm not manly at all. I might look like a grizzly bear, but I'm really not.
Yeah, until the stare comes out.
Oh yes, right? Absolutely. Yeah.
So, Ben, you talked a lot about this class. How do people take this class? How do people find what you do and hire you and learn more and get involved? With maybe point people in the right direction and help them remember it.
So it depends on the way that you learn. If you like the more visual stimulus, then YouTube is definitely the way to go. If you put in my name, Ben Cardall, which if you could remember all of the cards, you'll never forget my name anyway. That's it. I need that. The kind of the double guns at the end. But yeah, that's got my my resources from there. It's got the details of the Memory Palace course attached because it's a visual recording of a podcast. If you can put up with mine and Adam's fairly juvenile humor in parts, because we're nothing but big kids, and we still laugh at toilet humor, and like I'm a father of two, and I still laugh at that. I think it's one of those things. So if you can put up with that at times, you'll be fine. Failing that, the company that I currently work for as the director of behavioral insight is ProCipher. ProCipher.co is the website. You can find me on my website. All of the cards again, bencardall.com. Pretty much, if it exists online, you can find me there. The resource that most people tend to go for initially is my book, The Monographs, which
how do you spell it?
The Monographs. So MONOGRAPH. The Monographs.
Monograph.
It was a Sherlockian title. Whenever he referenced the paper that he wrote on a particular topic, it was always a monograph on something. So I thought I'd fairly obviously choose that as the title for my book. Oh, hey, who's this?
This is Misa.
Hi,
This is
Misa.
little Misa. Yeah, she came up to say hi. So she's a little fluff ball. Her nickname is Mrs. Fluffy Pants. So she decided to come before we wrap this up. She had to make an appearance. So
she's lovely.
Yeah. Thank you.
No,
she's purring too. Oh,
I can hear it. I can hear it vaguely. We've got oh no, he's probably belly up from his food. When I met Maddie, she had a cat. His name is Rufus.
Excellent.
After the car, I think is it Dreamstone, and the like. There's a character in there called Rufus. Really old cartoon. But yeah, I've digressed now because animals have come onto the table, and I could talk about animals all day. I really
us
could.
Us too.
But the Monographs is probably the more readily accessible version, as it's just come out on Audible as well, and there is a remarkable fellow reading it. It's not me.
Okay.
The initial version was me, but I was tasked with doing it myself, and I'm a technological idiot. I tried close to 3 years to get it onto the ACX website, and there was a time where if I would sort of go at one point, then the whole thing wouldn't get done, and I struggle to have 14-hour windows where I can read the whole thing.
Wow.
So there's this great guy. I think his name's something like JT Daniel or JT McDaniel or something like this, but he's a really kind of refined old English man, and he just sounds like the kind of guy that you would want reading you a campfire story. He's that kind of voice, and it's really cool.
All right. So that's on Audible. That's great. Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll check it out.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll buy it with one of my credits.
And
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's also in. Is it also in print though too? Yes.
Yes. So the original, it's a softback and a hardback that you can get from Amazon. The publisher, they do digital printing, so the books, they don't actually exist until you order them. But then they, I think it saves on shipping costs and the like. But that's technical things that they take care of. So rather than books being stored physically in a location, they send the request for an order, and it's digitally printed in the kind of country or place that it needs to be. So I think it gets to the proverbial you quicker that way as well.
Great. Yeah, I'm partial to hardcover, so I'll be picking up a hardcover version of that book. Do you ever make it to the States?
I do when I'm allowed out of the country. We're still stuck in a lockdown over here at the minute. But yeah, I'd love to come over to the States more, because it seems busy enough that it can kind of feed my need to observe. That's why whenever I take the opportunity, not just because of the stories and the like, I will always go to London in the UK, because it's busy, it's bustling, but it has those little secluded areas where if I want to get out of the way and take 5 and breathe and be quiet, then I can do. And that's kind of what I like about the appeal of most parts of America. I'm sure there are very quiet areas as well in between. But yeah, I'd love to come out there more. It's a wonderful place. Last time I went, where did I go last time? It was LA. Last time I was over in the States.
40 minutes from us.
Oh wow! No way.
Yeah. So when you come out, it would be wonderful to connect with you.
100%. I will definitely do that.
And my sister's moving to Ealing. I'm not sure how far Ealing is from you.
Ealing's about 2.5 hours from me in the car.
Well, and I have several other friends, James Tripp and of course Jonam and Lily. There's tons of people I have that are friends there. So when I visit, I will definitely make sure that I come see you.
100%, my friend. 100%. Yeah, I'll make you an oatcake.
Ooh.
Fantastic.
Ooh, Carlos, bring me one. Yeah, no.
Aldi or not, you'll get one, Satch.
yeah. Fax it to me. Yeah.
Hey, this has been a great conversation with both
Thank
of
you for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. This was great, Ben. Yeah.
Thanks for being on the show too.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. Thank you for listening to my rambling.
Yeah, and thank you for making Sherlock Holmes real.
Yes.
Yeah, you did it. Right. So,
Thank you.
all right, awesome.
You've been listening to The Authenticity Show with your hosts Carlos Casados and Satch Purcell. Very special thanks to our guest, the Deductionist, Ben Cardall. My name is Oliver Althoen. I produce the show. I also wrote our theme song, which you're listening to right now. Please remember to subscribe to The Authenticity Show wherever you get your podcasts and find us on social media. It means like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, check out our YouTube page, and you can find our website at authenticityshow.com. Thanks for listening and have an authentic day.